Thumbs up.
So welcome everybody. It's episode number 2 of series 1. Hashtag RVS does hashtag CCC. Roopa Vyas-Smith does Coffee Chai Chat. Today the topic is mental health. The topic of mental health is back in the media agenda and public arena. And many of us have seen the interview with Meghan Markle that she had with Oprah and the varying opinions about this. Also yesterday, I have to say on the catch-up ITV hub, I watched a documentary about Caroline Flack. And obviously that has brought up a number of opinions and thoughts around the arena of mental health. Of course, as well, last year during the COVID pandemic, and it continues this year, obviously, the whole topic of mental health awareness and well-being within our society, within our families, within our workplaces, and in various networks has taken center stage in a way it perhaps hadn't before. And it's interesting, I was thinking the other day that I guess, like many topics affecting human beings, they come into public consciousness because a well-known person talks about it, or we have a pandemic on our hands, and the devastating effect of that has just been heartbreaking. So what in my head, I call us ordinary folk, the extraordinary ordinaries, of which we have 2 today, and I'll introduce you to both Charlie and Denise shortly. And many of us, and I consider myself one of these, the subject of mental health never leaves our own personal arena or agenda. I hope we get to a time where people of every nationality, background, colour, creed, ability and sexuality can and really do talk openly about issues affecting us as human beings. And that's part of why I'm doing these fortnightly sessions. As a British Asian woman of Indian origin, proud to be part of the BAME community, I'd like to open up discussions and sessions around so many topics with a huge host of people from different backgrounds. And that's exactly what I did last week and exactly what we've done this week. So just as physical health is something we all have, mental health is also something we all have. Sometimes our physical health is good, sometimes not so good. Sometimes mental health is good, sometimes not so good. And it really is as simple as that. And that took me a long time to find peace with within myself. So of course, challenges with our mental health can vary from the feeling a little blue or sad because something specific has happened, which you understand and expect to feel, to this kind of full spectrum in between of a huge array of mental health conditions. So exactly like my conversation with Rowan and Leo a fortnight ago around grief and bereavement, my guests, Charlie, Denise, and of course myself, we are not professional medical experts in the field of mental health, but we are experts in our own challenge and experiences with mental health. So again, a disclaimer to all those lovely guests, and I now call them friends. Denise I've known for a while, and Charlie I've known for minutes. But I'm very conscious that this is not an easy topic to talk about. But part of my reason as a host to also participate in these dialogues and share my own experiences is really to make us feel as comfortable as we possibly can. And together, whether I share these dialogues with people I know or I don't know, I really want to create that sort of level playing field. So that's why I'll also share my experiences. And it's also very important to me, as I hit 50 last month, my motto for my 50s is to be brave. And I've been brave in some things in my life and not others. So this is one of those areas where I know I'm being brave, and I absolutely know my guests, Charlie and Denise, are also being brave. So let me start by introducing my 2 friends, guests on the show. So I start today with the first guest, Charlie Winton. Now, my path crossed with Charlie's 3 days ago, essentially Thursday last week, would you believe it? Somehow his post on LinkedIn came my way. I opened it on the day, which I don't ordinarily do, and commented on his post. So again, my mantra of being brave in my 50s, I contacted him and asked if he'd like to be a guest today. He responded very quickly, and I'm incredibly grateful for that, and said yes. So before you meet Charlie, a little bio of him by way of introduction. So Charlie, he's the founder of OK Positive. Through lived experience in a workplace that caused him mental health issues, including anxiety, OCD, and panic attacks, he's assembled a team of like-minded individuals who care about making an impact on people's mental health. As a business, their main values are communication, connection, courage, and commitment. And they live by these in everything they do. Their business goal is to create organizational change that benefits individual and collective mental health. And they've developed an app to do just that. So welcome, Charlie. Thank you for agreeing to participate today. I love the way we've connected. Firstly, how are you?
Very well, thank you. And it's fun, actually. Thank you for the very kind introduction. And it's lovely to be here. I'm well, and it's something we tend to talk about whenever I have a business conversation, a friendly chat like this, or whatever, someone I know or don't know. It's nice to ask how people are, and not, how did your sports team do this weekend, or how did your course go, or whatever. It's more like, how are you? And I'm well. Tired a little bit of not being able to see family and friends. I've got two beautiful new nieces to add to my third one, which is
so a little congratulations.
Thank you. And I did nothing for it. My brother's got all the credit for a beautiful family. But it's growing, and I don't get to see them. So for me, I'm well. I'm a bit tired, like everyone, I suppose, of not being able to see family, loved ones, and friends. But we make what we can of it, and I think Zoom has helped, or not just Zoom. Let's not increase their share price, but virtual communications and being able to stay in touch. So I'm well, thank you, and I hope you are as well.
Yeah, thank you. I'm very well, and as I say, thanks for being with us today. And just a question to you first, and I'll ask the same to Denise when I introduce her, is why did you agree to participate today?
It's a funny one though. It's living by the values, isn't it, really? My values have always been, mental health is important. We all have it, whether you're the CEO of a multinational corporation, or Jeff Bezos, or Danny from down the road, or Keith or Sally who lives next door. Like, we're all the same. And talking about it, if it makes one person's life a little bit easier, or they can feel like they can talk about it to their friends, and without sounding too dramatic, you can save people's lives just by talking to your friends and family and connections. So why not do it? It doesn't cost anything. So living by my values, I wanted to spend time. You get loads of people reaching out to you on LinkedIn about different things, and I believe you should give at least 30 seconds of your time to everyone. If it's something that you believe in, it's something you can add value to, or you can help with, then great, or can help you, even better. But yeah, so that's why I wanted to speak to people who are in the same position or have the same values, who want to help people and support people, and just crack on with it. So, and chatting is fun, believe it or not. I'm the kind of person, if you leave me in a white room, I would be, or just like this box room I'm in right now, if you left me in here with no one to talk to, it wouldn't be long before I was eating myself. So
well, thank you so much for chatting with us today, and I'm absolutely certain that you will add a huge value to this conversation and to this dialogue. So thank you. My second guest and friend is Denise. My path crossed Denise's about 6 years ago, and we reconnected on Facebook through the challenges I was doing as part of my 50th birthday fundraiser for the Trussell Trust. Denise, when I met her, struck me as a real straight talker, caring, understanding, and extremely in touch with her emotional side. So I asked Denise, as I asked Charlie, for a little bio that she would like me to share. And this is what she says. She says, I'm a middle-aged single woman with 2 grown-up boys, a daughter-in-law, and a grandson, who I'm just adding in, he's absolutely gorgeous. I've seen the Facebook pictures. I'm lucky to live in the beautiful town of Harrogate. I come from a very diverse family that is multiracial, and has different socioeconomics. I was brought up in a single parent family. I've suffered childhood trauma. I've plenty of life experience, have suffered the loss of loved ones to cancer, which is rife in my family. I believe all these experiences have shaped the person I am today. Denise also told me she recently changed careers from working in a special needs school to becoming a PCSO. And what occurred to me when she said that was, although both careers are very different, there's some huge crossovers when it comes to safeguarding, protection, and the word that sprang to mind for me was integrity. And I can see that as several of many strengths that Denise has in the time that I've known her. So welcome, Denise, and to you too. How are you today?
I'm absolutely fine. Thank you, Roopa. And thank you for those kind words. Yes, there is a lot of crossover in my job. I spend a lot of time out in the community talking to people, and I realise that on some days, the people that I'm talking to, I may be the only person they talk to all day. So I quite value that part of my job.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. And also the same question to you, Denise, that I asked Charlie. Why did you agree to participate in this dialogue with me today?
I made some notes, so if it looks like I'm reading off the notes, I am actually kind of reading off the notes.
Fine.
I didn't want to be falling over my words, which quite often I write things better than I say them sometimes. So I think mental health awareness is important to everyone. It's everybody's issue. So many people suffer depression without even realizing it. They go undiagnosed for a long time. And if I can help one person today, then that's an achievement for me, but it's also an achievement for the wider world, because if I can make someone feel better about themselves, or realize a little bit more about themselves, then that's good.
That is so wonderful. And I can certainly attest to that, Denise. When I first met you, I felt like you were somebody, even though I hadn't known you for that long, obviously, when we first met, that I could just talk to and be myself with. So that's testament to who you are as a person, your character. And so, thank you for sharing your reasons for being here today. Very much appreciated. So I'm now going to ask about 4 questions and ask each of you in turn to give your thoughts on this, maybe 1 or 2 minutes each. And it's not to strict timing, it's just whatever really has come up for you, or notes that you've made. I've done the same. I've also kind of made notes, because I also feel like you, Denise, that sometimes I don't want to trip over my words with certain things. So I completely get that, and that's acceptable. That's life. So firstly, to Charlie, may I ask, Charlie, can you remember what triggered your mental health conditions?
Yeah, vividly, I suppose. And I don't have notes, so I'll be waffling. So if you need me to rein it in, just be like, no, really.
Fine.
So everyone has different factors, and this is what I've realized from speaking to more and more people about mental health, is that there's no gold standard. It's like your experiences aren't any better or worse than anyone else's. It's your perspective of what's happened to you. So for me, I mean, my severe mental health issues happened in the workplace. So I've always had OCD. I think there's a line of it in my family history and whatnot. So whether it's flicking on the light on and off, or counting in your head too much, and stepping on the lines in the street, sort of thing, which is harmless in reality, but it creates quite a lot of strain on your day-to-day life, because you feel like you have to do things, and that can be problematic. But mine stemmed more from anxiety, and my anxiety started when I worked in a workplace that was incredibly full on. I love stress in terms of work stress and fun, but it got too much for me from a perspective of having to hit targets and be on the phone for a certain amount of time, and stepping out of your comfort zone for very, very long periods of time without any kind of respite. And it led to me having panic attacks, as you touched upon in my bio. So I found myself hiding away in the company toilets 3 or 4 times a day, just pretending I had, a tiny bladder rather than mental health issues. And I kind of, that was the moment when I was sitting there playing on a little merge pool game on my phone, realized that there were problems. And I kind of did like what anyone would do and left it at that and tried to do my best into, okay, what am I doing here? I learned mindfulness, I learned CBT through understanding what I was doing, and what I was doing was distracting myself or coping with my panic. So 15 minutes of playing on that game centered my mind. And then so I started educating myself on that, which helped me massively. But it was never until I took my problems home and became a grump, which was the nice way of putting it, at home, that I decided to make changes in my life, substantial ones. So yeah, I do remember it vividly. I remember the moment I was there. I remember the feeling. And it's one that thankfully I haven't really had much since. So touch wood. But yeah, I hope that answers your question.
It certainly does, and thank you for sharing that with us. And that must have been a kind of a really terrifying moment of realization. And obviously how we'll talk a little bit more through, you know, the next set of few questions about how things shifted for you and what helped. But I really, really appreciate that, because there may very well be people that are experiencing that now that will watch this and will relate. So thank you, Charlie. And the same question to you, Denise. Can you remember what triggered your mental health conditions? And if you could just describe a little of what you experienced.
Mine's going to be a bit long-winded, and I'm going to be a little bit ambiguous about some events. However, I first became aware that I suffered depression when I was about 15. However, at that time, when I kind of discussed it, it was way back in the 70s, and it was like, you're a kid, you can't have depression, only such and such get depression. There's so little understood about depression back then. It's only in hindsight that now I realise that actually, yes, maybe I did suffer depression. I also suffered greatly with PMT, post-menstrual tension, and that was sorted out in my 20s because I was on the pill. However, after I had my second son, that reared its head again, and I ended up being, after trying all the normal non-medicated methods, they didn't work for me. I finally went on to antidepressants, and they did work. And then when I hit menopause, my mood swings became to the point where they actually frightened me. I went from being totally happy and delirious one minute to actually feeling like I needed to punch someone the next. But that's whole different. That's a different set of circumstances to my actual depression. A childhood trauma that wasn't dealt with, basically what I call it, was I put it in a box and put it on a shelf, and it only reared its head on the odd occasion, and I was able to shut the box quite quickly before it affected me too deeply. However, it was affecting me more than I realised, and I only know this in hindsight now, in the way that my relationships have been formed and how they kind of disintegrate, without going into too much detail. Anyway, something triggered off a whole series of events, and it was a bit, I'd describe it as the Pandora's box was opened and everything flew out. So that's the name for that box now. It's Pandora's box. Everything flew out, and I couldn't get these things back in, and it was out there. And a lot of people tried to help me, and that the help they were kind of suggesting wasn't right for me. I needed to find my own way. So I'd had one counsellor who basically had kind of, I didn't connect with at all, and she actually kind of put the trauma back on me and basically said it was my own fault, and it wasn't, because this had happened to somebody else as well in exactly the same way, and it was my fault it had happened to them, and it wasn't my fault, it was the perpetrator's fault. So that, I thought, I'm not going to counselling again, because my God, what's that? So I reached out to some trusted friends, and I mean trusted friends, and I became quite open about it, so that they were aware that if I was kind of coming, because I'm not like what Robin Williams. I can't put a happy face on things. If I'm down, you know I'm down just by looking at me. I can't do that whole happy go lucky person, because if I'm happy, I'm happy. If I'm not, I'm not, and you can see it. Sorry if I'm waffling a little bit. Anyway, eventually I did find a counsellor that I clicked with, and I was able to talk to her, and she put it all back on me, in that to use my hindsight on things and to see things in a whole different way. And I came out of that and I thought, yes, she's right. Everything she said is right. Everything that it made me realise that things I was doing, and I looked back, because I used art, and I look back on some of my pictures and thinking, yeah, I can see that I've expressed myself here, and this is what I'm expressing. It's just at the time I didn't know it. And I'm happy to share some of those drawings with you if you want to. So then to go back, I worked in a special needs school, and I absolutely loved my job. It was a very different job. It was basically a job where myself and a head teacher at the time had said, let's make it up as we go along. This is what I want, and this is how I want you to do it, but I'm going to leave it to you to do it, make it up as you go along. And I was good at my job, really good at my job. And then we got a new head teacher who decided she wanted to restructure the school. And because I'm quite a strong person, and if I saw injustice or what I thought was injustice, I was happy to speak up. She didn't really like me very much. So my job was undermined. A job that I'd been left to do and was trusted to do, was suddenly, every move I made was questioned. Now I could have handled that, but I also had a child who was really testing me as well. And if I'd just had him testing me, that would have been fine. If I'd just had her testing me, that would have been fine. But the two together, just really, I suffered really, really badly. And it wasn't until I came to the conclusion that I needed to leave that job that I started to feel better. When I explained this to my mother, my second mother then said, if you haven't got a new job by July, because obviously that's the end of the school year, you're leaving anyway. And I said, well, I can't do that. I've got a mortgage to pay, I'm a single parent, blah, blah, blah. She said, we will sort out that until you've got another job. And that, for that person to do that, made me realise that although this person has always been supportive in my life and has been a great, she's my second mother, I thought, I must be really bad for her to say that, because it's not the kind of thing she would normally say to me. She's always been a great support. She's always offered really good advice, which I've usually taken. But for her to say that, I must be in a bad state. So I managed to get another job. And even though I took a pay cut for that job, I found myself even better. The stresses were taken off my shoulders from these people, and I felt a whole lot better about myself.
That is amazing. I mean, I think just listening to you there and your experiences, it struck me as to how powerful and profound they've been. And even though you didn't have a good first experience with a counsellor, you then gave yourself the chance to go to somebody else and have a much more nourishing experience for you that actually then allowed you to move forward. And obviously I'd like to explore that a bit more with you in the next few questions.
Fine, yeah.
But it's just, I could feel my own emotions welling up as you were talking, in the same way, in a different way. So I felt my emotions welling up when Charlie was talking, and I could picture myself in those situations. And I think that, just what the two of you said in one question, I mean, it's really blown me away how much you've shared and how honest and open you've been. So thank you. Just to say my experience of what I remember triggered for me managing my depression. I remember feeling very, very sad when my paternal grandmother, Ba, which is mother in Gujarati, died when I was 13. She had come to live with my dad, mum, my brother and myself after my grandfather passed away. I wasn't born then, so I never knew my paternal grandfather. My dad went to India to help Ba, grandmother, sort out various things and brought her back to the UK to live with us. And she'd been with us since I was born. And I felt very grateful that I was in her life and she was in mine. And I often say to people now, my goodness me, if you have the opportunity to experience time with your grandparents, don't let it go, because mine has just been breathtaking. I would not be the person that I am today without those 3 grandparents. The 4th, unfortunately, died before I was born. But when she passed away, and she passed away from throat cancer, I remember feeling a terrible pain I couldn't articulate. I just could not articulate it, except with tears. And then there was the funeral, and then a mourning period. And then you kind of get on with things. And I have a memory of my mum's younger sister, Ilamasi, when my grandmother's coffin was brought into our family home, as per Hindu tradition. So you do ceremonies, you bring your loved one back into the home and you do ceremonies in the home. And I was just inconsolable. My dad sort of reminded me recently of me kind of being so upset and saying, don't take Ma away, don't take Ma away. And I could feel it actually welling up inside me when he was telling me. So I was hugging Ilamasi and obviously saying these things. I felt so much, and I didn't realize it then, but I felt bloody angry with her as well. I felt really angry that she died. But as a child, of course, you get on with life, you go back to school, you laugh, and you leave those painful memories to kind of sit within you. But I noticed a kind of an ache and a sadness, and as I said, a sort of an anger. I couldn't access that. I could not access it at 13. And I think it grew within me. I hid it with other emotions, you know, covered things up. It was interesting, Denise, how you were saying that if you're sad, then people know it. If you're, you know, that you can tell on your face. Not with me. I hid it really well. So again, I'd like to say to anybody watching, people can fall into either side or be somewhere in between. I was somebody who could disguise things extremely well. Looking back, it was my first experience of my trigger of depression, but it was hidden so well that even I didn't know it existed within me. So that was quite a journey for me to where I am now. So thank you both for sharing your experiences. What I'd like to ask you both now, and again, if I start with Charlie first, what does it feel like when you're struggling with your mental health? How would you put it into words? And maybe it's something you've experienced recently, kind of coming up again, or maybe it hasn't been for a while that you've had these experiences. But I want to try and bring about some dialogue that anybody who's watching this, and for us too, because this becomes something nurturing and nourishing for us, for our experience today on Sunday. What are those words that have come to mind? What does it actually feel like? So as I say, Charlie, if I can start with you.
That's a great question. It's different all the time for me, I feel.
Yeah.
Sometimes it, you know, OCD, the word I would attribute to that is frustrating. Frustration is probably the word, because you know you don't want to do it, you know you don't want to think obtrusive thoughts, or you know you don't want to count to 30 in your head because you're anxious, but you do, and it suddenly becomes systemic, and that's frustrating. Whereas panic can feel claustrophobic for me. I feel like you're suddenly not aware of anything around you. You're very much focused solely on one area, and you're obsessing over it, and your heart rate increases. You see kind of somatic symptoms to your, you know, heart rate increasing, sweaty palms, these kind of things that people don't realize that they're experiencing until they go, oh, why is this happening? And so claustrophobic, you feel kind of lost, I suppose. That those would be my two main ones. I mean, day to day, if these things all accumulate, and I don't know how it is for you two, but for me, if these all accumulate over a period of time, it can be worse than that, because then dull would be the word. Like you generally, things get numbed, and you think, oh, this is never going to end. I'm never going to feel better than this. And that's when it becomes a bit more cumulative, if you understand what I know I'm waffling a bit here, but if you understand what I mean, just there's individual situations, there's emergency situations, and then there's just the collective, this is my state of mind, and this is what's happening. And for me, those would be the words that sum it up: frustrating, dull, which is a weird one because you don't assume your mental health, oh, this is dull. But for me, when the same thing happens over and over again, and you find new ways to fix it or to resolve the individual situation you are in, if it keeps coming up and cropping up, it can be incredibly boring because you're hitting your head against a brick wall. You're going, why can't I feel better? Or why can't I feel happier about this? But then for me, I really enjoy the happy moments. So like, it all sounds very sad and very, but without downs, you wouldn't have ups. And without people passing away, you wouldn't have marriages or births. You wouldn't have, and so for me, prioritizing and celebrating the good moments, don't let them pass by, because the bad times will come and you'll have to deal with them as best you can. But yeah, so those would be my 3 words. And then I think positively, I think for me, mental health is a daily challenge. It's a weekly challenge. It's a monthly, yearly challenge. And it's one I really enjoy because I like being happy. I like finding new ways to reduce negative effects and increase positive ones, I suppose.
Yeah. And I can, having just met you, as I say, it's been minutes since, we've met, and I know I can really hear that. Yeah, but it feels like we've connected on some sort of, we're part of each other's tribe, if there is such a thing, which I believe there is.
We go clan in Scotland because we're all pasty white and ginger. But my voice belies my, I am Scottish, believe it or not, but I sound very, very, I get the Jack Whitehall jokes often, so poor man's Jack Whitehall.
Well, I love accents, so every accent kind of works well for me. But I think it was that was very powerful what you said, and I think the sort of that mix, as you say, of the kind of cumulative effect, which I think many of us with living with a mental health condition will absolutely relate to. So I think, yes, things do kind of build, and so sometimes it's one thing that you're kind of grappling with, and other times it's a you use the word dull, which again I can relate to, that dull, that numb, and all that sort of thing. But also I'm so glad that you brought in the positive aspects, because I think when you have had those experiences, sometimes you feel, I'm not going to feel the positive. And I think if you're very early on in your journey of exploring, any condition you may have around mental health, it can feel like that. But I would agree with you 100% that actually the ups and the positives you experience are far greater, because there's a gratitude, there's an appreciation.
I often feel, sorry for interrupting, but I couldn't agree more. I often feel that when you speak to your friends and family and your connections, or even people you met minutes ago on LinkedIn, you never say, when someone says, "How have you been?" you never go, "Oh, I felt great for the past few weeks." You only bring up when you felt bad. So like, "Oh, I felt down," and you can't put a finger on why. There's loads of things, but people should, when it's gonna sound really silly, but I used to get cold sores when I was little, and this is something I just thought of now, so bear with me on this. But I used to get cold sores basically every week. I don't know why. It comes up with a bad immune system and stress or whatever, and I used to get them all the time, and so I'd feel bad all the time whenever I got one. And then as I grew up a bit and your hormones changed and things like that, I got it less and my immune system built up. But I never celebrated the times back in the day. It was always, "Oh, I hate feeling this way because I've got a cold sore and I feel terrible." But when I didn't have one, I never celebrated the fact I didn't have one. I always went, "Oh, it's just a normal day. This is how I should feel." And that's maybe something that I want to highlight, is that people, you can't just expect to be happy. Happy is not the normal emotion. Like, if mental health is a balancing beam, it tilts either way. And you win the lottery, your balancing beam is going to be up here on the positive side. Your parent dies or a sibling dies, it's going to be at the very lowest rung. And so for me, just highlighting those days where I didn't have a cold sore and another week without a cold sore and I feel great, it put it into perspective. And with something so simple as just a small blister on your lip, as opposed to mental health, if you can do it with something more powerful like your mental health and go, "Wow, today was a good day." Why? Because nothing bad happened. I went through, I did this, I ticked off this, the small wins, as I call them. It makes a massive difference for me. Doing that positive side, you've got to.
Yeah. And thank you so much for highlighting that, because I think that is absolutely crucial, and that's very important to bring up in this discussion. So I really appreciate you bringing that to the fore, and it's really important for people to hear that as well. Thank you, Charlie. And to you, Denise, what does it feel like when you're struggling? How would you put it into words?
Before I say that, I just comment on something Charlie said about not being happy all the time. Happy is not a usual emotion. Yeah. I think you've got the two ends of that. You've got the depression and the feeling low at the bottom, and you've got the happy at the top. I think the middle part of that is just being at peace with yourself. And that's your normal state, being at peace with yourself.
It's not happy or sad, is it? It's you are you. You're content with this is me, and sadly, the thing I've realised, there was an article, God, it must have been years ago, in the Daily Telegraph that said, you have your point of happiness and it will relatively come back to the same place. And I agreed and disagreed at the same time, because I think they shift as your experiences change. So if you have a lot of external things that affect you negatively, your balancing beam, where it comes back, so you win the lottery, it's up here, you lose someone, it's down here, and it will eventually, as time passes, go back to your middle point, your at peace area. But your at peace area,
equilibrium.
Yeah, but your at peace area can be higher up into the happier section or lower down into the sad section, based on the collective and cumulative things that go through and experiences through your life. So yeah, I completely agree with you. And the at peace thing that's the point you want to hit, isn't it? As much as you can.
It is. And I think for both of you to have raised that is so crucial, because again, there will be people listening to this that actually really need to hear that from people that have experienced, people like us that have experienced our own challenges and have found that peace point, that equilibrium point, that point of balance, however you might refer to it. So yeah, really do appreciate that from you both. So from you, Denise, what does it feel like when you're struggling? How would you put that into words?
Right. At first, on my notes I wrote, I can't actually put it into words, but this picture describes it perfectly. But then I did go on to make notes about how it just feels. So if I show you this picture, can you see it?
Brilliant. Yes.
So that basically is how I feel when I'm slipping into depression. Basically, it's like, at first I don't realize it's like being pulled into a mire or quicksand, and you don't actually feel it, and then all of a sudden it's got you in its grip, a tight grip, but you can't get back out of it again. And that's how it feels to me. It's not having the means to get back out of it again, not realizing it's happening to me, which is what happens. I always slip into it very, very slowly, and then all of a sudden I realize it's got its grip on me, and now how the hell do I get it to release me again? And the way I do it is different at different times, because it sometimes going into the middle of a field and screaming words, gets toxic out. Sometimes it's crying, sometimes it's putting on loud music and dancing around the living room just to release all the endorphins and the toxins that are building up. Gives that kind of release, so I can sort of like start clawing my way back, and then looking at what it is that's making me feel this way, and perhaps trying to do something about it. Of course, for everyone, some people, there's nothing they can do about it. And I have a friend who is bipolar, and I hope she doesn't mind me sharing this. I won't mention her name. She is an absolutely beautiful person inside and out, and she has what she's called her black dog days. And when she's suffering a black dog, she used to just, because we worked together, she used to say, I'm having a black dog day. And I just didn't do anything. I didn't say anything. All I did was sat next to her, put my hand on her, and just say, I'm here. And it didn't need her to talk. She didn't want to talk through it, or she couldn't talk through it. And rather than me talking at her, telling her that, whatever platitudes I could come up with, sort of like, that's not the way to go. It's just, I'm here for you. You can say anything to me. You can hit me. You can kick me. You can hug me, whatever. But I'm just here. And that for her was, really appreciated. But like I said, for me, I wouldn't realize I was there like she did. She'd know in the morning when she woke up, whereas I didn't. So,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Can you show us that image again? Because I thought that was very powerful. And it's also really important.
I've got another image as well.
Yeah. I think images, because people's creativity and how they express what's going on for them, sometimes it's through words, and sometimes it's through pictures, sometimes it's through art or sculpture or whatever it is that actually does it for you, or cooking, I don't know, or dancing. And so the reason why I asked this question is I was hoping that this would come up, and it's exactly what's happened. And Denise, if you want to talk us through your second picture, that would be great, your image.
This picture is basically, because I'm a very logical thinker, I'm a problem solver, basically. It was basically, if someone didn't know how to do something, or if there was a problem, oh, Denise will know what to do. Just that was a key phrase at work. Denise will know. Denise will know. It's like, oh, okay, Denise knows. Oh. So I've got the logic side of my brain there, where everything's in a straight line and it's all going down into the jar. And then the emotive side, which is like, it talks about my emotions, and they're all curly lines, which is fine because they're all still going down in straight lines. However, when that the depression takes over, it's a bit more like that. It's all mixed up. It's like a plate of spaghetti almost, and they're the words that go with it, because words for me, words work for me. So that can describe, what words are on there actually? Nebulous, bewildered, disorientated, unbalanced, unhinged, addled, and befuddled is how I would describe.
Those are brilliant words, and I love that image that you've put in there that describes it. And certainly I can definitely relate to that, and I'm sure others that will view this will also be able to relate to that, and maybe think about, if somebody's viewing this and is experiencing their own episodes or challenges or concerns, however you want to phrase it, then finding a creative outlet to express it, even if they're not at the point where they can talk with somebody, to do something like that would be such benefit. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I really appreciate that, Denise. So for me,
that's a picture I did when I was. That's a picture I did when I was about 15. I always used to draw on blue paper. I don't usually draw with colour. And basically, it's on the see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. Remember the monkeys? And then I was trying to say, if I didn't do any of those things, I wouldn't have that at the end where you'd be crying. But obviously, that was a very adolescent thought. But yeah. So I was saying earlier, I used to express myself through art. Even as a young person, I'm not very good at art, but it's like I can't use color, I can't use paint, but I can use a pencil.
Very good. So yeah, I'd love to be able to express through art, but yeah, stick figures for me, it's not
there's nothing wrong with stick figures. There's nothing wrong with stick figures at all.
I think the thing is, we're all so different, and so for one person it will be one way, and like for you, Charlie, it will be your words, or it'll be you focusing your energies through your through your organization and creating your app and the team of like-minded people you brought together. So again, that's really important for us to say. The three of us are extremely different in our life experiences, in who we are, our backgrounds, our cultures. But the reality is we've all experienced something which has had a profound impact on us in terms of our mental health. So that commonality, although the way we express it might be different, is a common theme for us. I think for me, the words that sort of came to mind as I was thinking was feeling lost and hopeless and helpless, that kind of dark cloud description. Sometimes it feels like a grey cloud, sometimes it's black. Sometimes I know why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling. Sometimes I genuinely do not know. I do not know why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling. There's a sort of a heaviness. There's a withdrawal from people and things and life. And there's an anger. And I only really tapped into that. And I think I talked about that when my grandmother passed away when I was 13 and felt something going on, which I hid. It was like, oh no, we don't want to go there. Don't want to tackle that bit of us. But I remember sharing this many, many years ago with a friend of mine called Jerry, and he had talked to me about a book by an author called Dorothy Rowe, and she described depression as frozen rage. And I could relate to that. I thought, wow, that was like a light bulb moment for me, but it was very powerful. And so also for me, when I've had those episodes in the past, and I don't feel it's like something that is cured, you know, life doesn't get cured. So it's not like, oh, I'm cured now. I manage it. I manage it every day, every moment, some days better than others, etc., etc. But when I do have those moments, I don't want to get out of bed. I don't want to draw the curtains. I'm not worried about what the house looks like, and I can leave things for a while. I have this, I simply don't care attitude. I was going to swear there, Channel 4.
We'll bleep it out with like or something like that.
But now what's interesting is I let that all reside within me. But for a long time, I felt angry and upset about what I was feeling. And then I was also managing the anger and upset about what I was feeling. That becomes a double whammy, if that makes sense. So you're feeling this stuff, and then you're feeling angry about feeling this stuff, and then you're trying to manage it. And so that has really shifted in my life. I can genuinely say that. It's taken time, but it has really shifted. So for now, like, my episodes are few and far between, but I do recognize when the symptoms start. And I have a much better, you know, I think probably what, you know, many of us, we describe it in different ways, but essentially this kind of mental health toolkit at my disposal, and to deal with things a little more quickly and to stop them from becoming unmanageable, because that's the other thing, you know, that's a tough one. So the next question to ask you both, and I think I'll start with Denise first on this one. All three of us have been managing our mental health conditions, our challenges, for several years now. And what do you find helps you now, if anything triggers these feelings within you?
I'm find myself making myself busy. If usually I prefer to be outside, so it's like I've got 2 gardens, and I will busy myself. My gardens are by no means manicured. I don't want manicured gardens, but I do want them tidy. So last year, because it through COVID, we weren't allowed to go out and what have you. And although I was still in work, I wasn't furloughed, but I was at home. I ended up taking out a hedge because it needed taking out. I wanted more land at the back, so there was a fence behind the hedge. So I thought that hedge is not really serving a purpose. So I made sure there was no birds' nests in there, and then I hacked the whole thing back and gravelled it all. And that, for me, doing something practical like that, even if it's just cutting the grass, gives you a sense of, yeah, that looks so much better now. And I know that's kind of cosmetic in a way, but it's because you're concentrating on what you're doing, you're not thinking about, you're not sort of allowing the thoughts to take over, if that makes sense. So I can do that, or I can sit and write something to get it out on paper. Like I say, I'm actually better at writing things than I am actually trying to articulate. Painting and decorating, making something, taking the dog for a walk, being at the beach. Oh, to be at a beach, you know, feel the breeze, smell the sea and all of that always lifts my mood. So yeah, for me it's different things. It's just being practical usually. Works for me.
And you talked in the past about sort of counselling and sharing with a couple of friends, and what sort of other things have helped you in the past?
Right, well, it's having the right counsellor helps, but if you don't want to go through a counsellor, it's finding someone that gets it. Yeah, that gets it, that doesn't try to sort of like say, well, if you do this and you do that and you do the other, that'll help you, because that might help one person but it won't help another. And that person's got to be non-judgmental, so it's got to be someone you really, really trust. And
agree.
But and kind of knowing that now, for me, I've got that hindsight of what it is that triggered things, and I I wrote a catharsis and I drew my emotions. That's what those pictures are for. My counsellor, she said, oh, it's school holidays, not going to see you for a little while, blah, blah, blah. I want you to just draw a picture of one emotion. And me, I couldn't choose one emotion, so I did them all. So I started off with sadness and sorrow, grief, anger, shame, all of them, which is how I've ended up with a little book of different types of pictures. And all of them are accompanied by a page of words that then describe that emotion. That helps. So different people will find different ways to help themselves, but the first thing to do is the realization that you have having mental health issues. And it's a bit like admitting you've got alcoholism. You know, that's the first step, admitting that you've got it and looking into it and looking into what's causing it. For some people, it may just be something, chemical imbalance in the brain, and it might be sorted by medication. I mean, the chemicals in the brain are affected anyway. It's known that's why antidepressants work, because they work on the chemicals in your brain. So it's facing up to it and being brave about it and not trying to hide it, to bring it out and you know, to start dealing with it. And it can be a really, really slow process that everyone will go at their own pace, but it's realizing that you're different from everybody else. Your depression, your mental health issues are different to everybody else, although obviously some things will overlap, but it's about individualism and kind of working towards sorting it out. Either on, some people will be able to do it on their own, some people will need some help and guidance, and other people will need a lot of help and guidance. But that will change once they've started down that route. I think it's making a positive step forward. Does any of that make any sense?
Yeah. It makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I could see Charlie nodding there, and I'm certainly nodding away. It certainly does. And yeah, I really appreciate you sharing all of that. And I think also bringing up the fact that everybody's an individual. What your recipe is going to be in terms of your managing of anything in our life, whatever that happens to be, and mental health is no different, is going to be bespoke and unique to that person. So finding that out is part of our journey. May I ask you now, Charlie, so for you, what have you found has helped in the past, and what sort of helps you now, really?
So yeah, mine, it's going to sound like, genuinely, it's going to sound like corporate lingo, but it's because that's the way I label it. So I've got like preventative, proactive, and reactive measures. I know it sounds like a therapy or a clinical thing. It's not. It's just the way I put them into the separate box. So for me, the kind of preventative side is I journal my thoughts, I journal my triggers. So if I feel panicky or anxious, I jot it down. I'm lucky I use tech to do that, because I'm not very good at writing or on paper. You should see my handwriting, it's atrocious. But I recognize what makes me happy, what makes me sad, and you kind of, it's almost putting a list of what's pros and cons. The proactive side for me is when I experience those things, what do I do to alleviate the symptoms? So if I'm panic, what do I do? Whether it's a mindfulness audio, whether it's watching a film, whether it's talking to a friend, whether I know, for example, if I feel really anxious because of work stress or because of family stress or loneliness, I'll go for a walk. I live in Edinburgh, so I walk up a place called Carlton Hill, which is quite a short hill, but it overlooks the entire city, beautiful panoramic views. And I just sit there with a podcast in or some music, and I just sit there and chill out. And for me, that's something that alleviates anxiety for me. So I know from my preventative side, I know what I recognize as, this is what people tend to, I think I had a conversation with someone around mental health and the pandemic, for example, the dreaded P word, and a coronavirus. And the conversation that we had, he was saying, we're lucky because we've experienced these things before. We know what helps these things, whether it's chemical side, whether it's medication, whether it's exercises, cognitive behavioral therapy, whether it's going for a walk, talking to a friend, cutting your hedge. You know what to do. Whereas there's a lot of people right now that are experiencing mental health issues for the first time with absolutely no idea what to do. And so that's where, for me, the education, the preventative side is the biggest thing that we can focus on. Reactive is when, for me, is therapy, which I'm lucky I've not gone to yet. I know I will, and I know I'll have to at some point, but I'm focusing on the preventative and proactive at this point in my journey, which is helping me at the moment. Whereas I know for a fact I can always have it, it's there somewhere to go, and that's brilliant. At the moment, I tend to lean on friends and family, trusted people, as Denise was saying, and you as well, Roopa. But yeah, for me, the preventative side is the one that I focus on massively. I'm not saying that you can prevent things, and that's not what I'm trying to come across as. It's the box I've labeled it as, is recognizing that we all have mental health, positive and negative, both play into that, and finding what works for you. Because for me, watching my rugby team play on a Saturday makes me feel brilliant, and I know I love doing it. For someone else, that will not help them in the slightest. so sometimes when we lose, it really doesn't help me either. But yeah, just recognizing there are things that you can do. You're not, and that's the word, you're not hopeless, and there's not nothing you can do. There are things, and it's worth a try, isn't it? It's worth a punt, is the way I'd like to put it. Yeah, I hope that answers the question.
It really does. And I love the fact that your approach, both to the kind of question and the way that you manage things and the way that you viewed this, is so different to each other's, both yours and Denise's. And that's, again, really important to highlight, because, you know, we have so many differences. There are people out there with all kinds of different backgrounds, but actually, and different ways of dealing with things. So to hear from the both of you how, you know, you view that, the question, how you manage that in your life, what makes sense to you, is absolutely crucial. So the fact that you've put what you've termed as corporate lingo, I think, is brilliant. I really, really do. And I love the kind of difference and similarities, you know, to both of your ways to approaching this. So thank you for that. Yeah. For me, in the past, counselling has very much helped, and sharing with friends and family only when I felt strong to do so, because there's been this part of me that's been, oh, I need to protect people. Can they really understand? Can they accept what I'm going through? And so that's been a journey all of its own for me. I've been very mindful, I think, as the years have gone on, who to share things with when I felt fragile. It hasn't always been helpful talking when I'm not ready. It hasn't been helpful sharing with people who I get a sense of that they may not get it, whatever it is. And also, it hasn't been helpful to spend too much time going over and over it in my head. So what I've learned is the sort of out of boundaries, if you like. And that took me years, and I'm still fine-tuning that, because sometimes we can get very thrown and absorbed by things, and that can happen to people anyway, whether it's our work situation, our relationships, personal, work-related, professional. And so this art of having a kind of a balance, that equilibrium, the things that we've talked about before, is crucial. What helps me now is kind of having days where I don't have an agenda, which honestly has taken me ages to figure out. And I have a handful of
being bored.
yeah, but you never are. That's the thing. And even if you are, the kind of mind wanders off somewhere, and you know, as Denise so graciously put it, I am a little quirky, eccentric. Or how did you describe me, Denise? I loved it.
Batty is a fruitcake.
That's just the best description. I love it. That is my Sunday motto. Batty is a fruitcake. Love it. Right. So people in your life that kind of just know you and get you, and there's a handful I have in my life that kind of remind me, including my husband Rich, who will kind of, you know, he said a few things to me that have kind of prompted a dialogue in my head. And again, like kind of both of you said, doing things that sort of make you smile. For me, it's, you know, music, having a boogie to music in the living room, being creative, which could be whatever that looks like. We've got planted little dwarf trees outside so the flat that Rich and I rent, we've got a roof terrace outside, and I planted little dwarf fruit trees. And I never had a garden before, or any kind of outside space. So actually to see things grow and nurture them. And I know, Denise, you talked about sort of gardening and butchering that bush and
usually
getting it out.
I'm usually pulling something out. Yeah, I'm usually hacking at something.
Yeah. I'm pulling out weeds from those dwarf trees, which reminds me I need to do that this afternoon. And also I get very absorbed in like YouTube. I can go down the YouTube rabbit hole and I'm sort of like TED Talks and this talk and that talk, and you know, kind of that can really absorb me with different things. The thing that I've realized probably during this pandemic is this sort of art of dialogue with myself. So having this kind of dialogue with myself about what's really going on. The reason why I share this is because in my own personal development journey, there's been a shift from needing validation and approval from other people to having self-validation. Now, I'm not quite there, but I'm much, much further along the track than I was 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, which has also allowed me to be a bit braver and talk about things which I wouldn't have necessarily shared. Because in the nicest possible way, if people go, we don't like you anymore, I know that I'll be okay. And that is a huge difference. I can't tell you that you can achieve that. So
I can really relate to all of that, Roopa. Really relate to all of that.
Yeah. And maybe that's a female thing. Maybe that's just a human being thing. Because I certainly don't want to be sexist about that. And my male friends, when I've spoken about this, have said, yeah, I do kind of get that. And so that kind of stuff helps the symptoms from sort of building and helps you build sort of resilience, if you like, because that's another crucial factor, I think, with mental health conditions, you know, that sort of building of little things and little bits in your toolkit that will help you, and that, you know, Charlie, you've spoken about yours, and Denise, you've spoken about yours, and for others out there that are listening, and please do feel free, you know, this will be posted tonight on YouTube at about 8 o'clock. Feel free to comment about what kind of things help you, or, you know, what's been beneficial, and, you know, share it as much as you can, because actually this isn't really about me, Denise, or Charlie, although it is today, but this is about our commitment and our passion about mental health awareness, and to say to people, it's okay. And, you know, we're finding acceptance and compassion. We're aware of what our triggers are and what helps us. Having purpose as well, I think, is very powerful. Things that make you smile. So the last question now is, what might you both like to say to someone who's maybe suffering in silence or struggling and doesn't know what to do or where to turn? So Denise, maybe if I start with you first.
Yeah, well, I'd just reiterate that you need to find someone that you can trust and will listen without judging you. That's really important. You've got to, I think, talking it through with someone helps to sort it out in your head, if that makes sense. So rather than keeping it inside, talk about it, get it outside so that it makes sense to yourself. Does that make sense in what I'm saying?
Completely.
And like, unfortunately for me, I find it difficult to realize when it's happening until it's happening. But when you realize that it's happening, do something constructive to get it out. Were being used before were excellent, but I don't use the corporate word, so I would use constructive. Do something constructive.
I'm not sure if Denise has frozen. Has Denise frozen?
You're writing a letter.
Oh, right. Sorry, Denise. You'd literally just frozen there. So if you can just, because I'm not sure how the recording will go. And obviously, I don't know how to edit, so there will be no edits. So if we could just, you were saying that if you could just rewind back just a minute, because you froze for a minute.
Sorry, where do you want me to rewind to?
So if you were saying, obviously, talking to somebody that you feel kind of comfortable with.
Yeah. You've got to trust that person, and like say, they're not going to judge you. Hopefully, they're not going to judge you. Just being constructive. When you realise that you're falling into it, then you know, do something. Charlie's words earlier, I don't use those kind of words, so it's constructive, whatever that may be. Cooking, baking a cake, cutting the grass, going for a walk, listening to music, dancing, going into a field and having a good scream, exercise, whatever way helps you to sort it out in your head. Start doing that proactively. That's one of the words that Charlie used, wasn't it? Proactive. Second use.
We're learning from each other. We never stop. We're teachers and students all our lives, aren't we? So
every day's a school day.
that's brilliant. Thank you. That's really, really helpful, Denise. And Charlie, to you, what might you like to say to someone who may be suffering or doesn't really know where to turn?
Yeah, well, it's something that we all have. So just no matter how crazy, far-fetched or silly or stupid or difficult your situation may be, you won't be the first person to have experienced it, and you certainly won't be the last. So for me, it would be, whether you do it for yourself, whether you do it for others, whichever way you want to paint it, as Denise says, talk to someone, or not just talk to someone, start doing something about it. The first step is just get on with it. And for me, yeah, whether that's cutting the grass or doing something physically or screaming or shouting or talking to a friend or just even texting someone saying, look, I need some help. I'm struggling with something. You don't have to label it. You don't have to say that oh, I've got mental health issues now, put me in this section of society, because I can assure you that section of society is everyone. It's not based on race, religion, sex, whatever. It's everyone will, you know, you have mental health issues. That's not your label. You're a human. For me, it would be that it's just take a step into doing something and you know, own it. It is what it is. It's the luck of the draw. You've got what you have, and that if you can help someone else with it, if someone else can help you with it, that's only a beneficial thing. So yeah, just open up is the piece of advice I'd give, and you'd be amazed by what good can come out of that.
Yeah, and don't forget that there are organisations that can help. Mind is one that springs to my mind, excuse the pun. So if you don't feel you've got anybody, there are organisations that can actually help as well.
Yeah, that's not exclusive to family, friends, or, you know, there are people that feel like they can't reach out to anyone in their immediate network. There are people that don't know you that will care. So and like this, Roopa and I, you know, have connected on Thursday. You can see that she cares, and that's not going to be different for anyone else. There are other Roopas out there. There are other Denises out there. So that's the point. Help will come in a strange but unlikely source.
Thank you. That's brilliant. I'm so glad that there are other Denises and other Charlies out there. I'm a bit worried about the other Roopas out there, because baci is a fruitcake.
Roopa, it takes one to know one is all I can say. So, you know, I'm a bit crazy there myself, you know. I really admit that to any all and sundry.
Oh, I love it. I have to say, I would echo you know, what both of you have said. You know, who might you trust around you? And that could be a friend, that could be, you know, might even be your GP. So, you know, you might feel that you can go to your GP or a medical professional, and I would encourage that if you feel that you don't have anybody in your network, or quite rightly, both as Denise and Charlie have said, you know, charitable organizations, there's Mind, Rethink Mental Illness, Samaritans, Young Minds, Mental Health Foundation. There are so many organizations out there that you can tap into. And also the other thing, just to say, and I was talking to somebody about this a little while ago, is your organization, your company may have an employee assistance program, which allows you to tap into confidential counseling. So, you know, you can easily do that, and it really is confidential. Your organization will not know that you've contacted that. And I've worked for organizations, my background is HR, so I've worked for organizations where there is an EAP, an employee assistance program in place. All we get is stats of number of people that have contacted, and a couple of other things. We don't know names, we don't know why, we don't know what, whether it's about, you know, debt, or whether it's about financial advice, or whether it's about counselling, or whether it's about any other matter. So I really would encourage you to kind of think about that. I would say from my own sort of personal experience, it is tough to ask for help if you're not that sort of person. It took me ages to get over the worry of embarrassing myself and what I felt as an Asian woman, as a woman, maybe, as a human, quite rightly, as Charlie put it, that worry of airing my dirty linen in public, you know, that embarrassment, the shame, the negative emotions in my head. Why am I feeling this way? I remember thinking, I'm strong, I'm from a good family, I'm capable, I'm competent. What's going on? Why can't I cope? I'm weak. And all the other, quite frankly, unhelpful dialogue that you could say to yourself. But it takes time. You know, all of us are several years into our journey with this. So, you know, exactly as Denise was saying, and I know kind of, you know, Charlie sort of mentioned this as well. This is like, you know, incremental little steps. It's not like an exponential curve. It really is like little bit of steps. It's not like you put in this and that happens. You put in this and that. No, that's definitely not my experience. And I'm sure it isn't many other people's as well. And I really do feel, after a lot of support in so many ways from so many people and so many different sources, there is, coming back to something that Charlie said, this sort of positive, many positive moments, a sense of gratitude. And bizarrely, I never thought I'd get to this point. So obviously I am the tortoise, I am the late bloomer in many ways, but I feel stronger and braver than I have ever felt. Genuinely, I really can say that, because I did open up about this stuff. I did do that inner work. So even if you just talk to one person, again, echoing what Denise and Charlie have both said, give yourself a chance, see what happens, see what opens up for you. And it really took me a long time to get to the acceptance of managing depression. Depression isn't who I was. It was something that I kind of managed, just like I managed life, just like I wear glasses, just like I'm started to grey when I was a teenager. And now I've come to accept. Thank you.
That's gorgeous.
But you come to accept all these parts of you, and you actually love all these parts of you. And so I would also say, be kind and gentle with yourself as you would to a dear friend when you're going through this stuff. And I know it isn't easy to do. So really, I just want to say a huge thank you. We've come to the end of this discussion now, to both Denise and Charlie for being absolutely inspiring guests. You've been open, you've been honest, you've been candid, you've shared from your heart, and I've really felt that. And I think anybody who watches this would absolutely feel the same. Please, as I say, do share, both of you, with people in your network, and encourage others to do the same, because we really want to get this message out in any which way that we can. And what's really interesting, and I can say that from my personal experience, someone who kind of sometimes hid behind what was really going on, sometimes you think, oh, I won't share with this person, because maybe that's exactly the person you need to share with. So I would really encourage you to do that. So again, I will see you all on Sunday, the 4th of April for session 3 of my YouTube show. Please do subscribe to my channel as well if you can. I'd love to get to 100 subscribers. I'm a little kind of like toddler, growing with this experience. So if I can get to 100 by the end of 2021, I think I'm on 45 at the moment, which is brilliant. So thank you. I'm grateful to each and every one of my 45 subscribers, anyone who watches this. And again, thank you to Denise and Charlie. So just a little wave from all of us, away from Denise. Denise, where are you calling us from? It's sunny Harrogate, isn't it?
Sunny Harrogate, yes.
Yay. And from Charlie, who is in sunny Edinburgh.
Sunny Edinburgh for once. Yeah, it's usually overcast and cold, but beautiful Edinburgh. Yeah.
And I'm in the sunny Oval. No cricket going on. I don't know. Maybe a little cream tea or strawberries and cream or something. Oh, that's Wimbledon, isn't it? That's not great.
Yeah, cricket's pints of lager and crossword.
I thought it was cucumber sandwiches.
Yeah, and cherry bakewells. That was the reason.
Cucumber sandwiches, cherry bakewells, cucumber with a crust cut off, Denise. Can't wait until we can.
Cucumber sandwiches. I don't like cucumber.
Can't wait until we can actually meet in person. Thank you, guys. I'm gonna pause the recording now, but don't go because I'd like to say a little thank you to you out of this. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.